Welcome to What CEOs Talk About. Do you wonder what CEOs talk about behind closed doors? How they bring their vision to reality? How do they overcome and succeed through adversity? We share that and so much more with each episode. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, everybody. My name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About, where we translate vision into frontline operations. Today, we're going across the pond in Italy. Alinka, thank you very much for being on the show.
So excited to be here, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alinka, can you give us your full name? What's your title? What do you do kind of right now, currently?
Alinka Rutkowska. I'm the CEO of Leaders Press, where we help entrepreneurs turn their book ideas into bestsellers. And I'm also a 5 times USA Today best-selling author, so happy to talk about business and about books.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. I always ask, before we jump into the title of the show, which we discussed, can you tell us about your story? It's important, I believe, for the listeners in the audience, to know there needs to be a reference of who Alinka is to give bigger context on when you do say something, people are going to connect your history with what you are. So can you tell us where you're from originally and kind of the path that took you on to where you are today?
Originally, I'm from Poland, and I think the first thing I did that could have signaled that I might end up here chatting with you was when in primary school I decided to put together a competing school newspaper, because there was already a school newspaper that I didn't like. And I thought, hey, I think we could do better here. I had a lot of support from my mom, who really incentivized this project. Mm-hmm. And I started writing the first issue of this newspaper. So those were the early 90s. I put together this first issue. I typed it up on my computer. And I had access to technology because my parents still are university professors in IT. So I had all the tech at home. I printed that first issue and then photocopied it, stapled it together, and started, running around school selling this thing. And, my fellow classmates liked it so much that they started asking if they can contribute to the next issue.
Oh,
and
wow.
First I thought, that's my newspaper. But then I thought, hey, that's less work for me. Like, they're going to do everything. So I was like, yeah. And they came up with the ideas. I'm going to write a story. I'm going to write a joke. I'm going to write an essay. I'm going to do this. I'm like, okay. So then for the next issue, I actually had even less work. And I really enjoyed putting it all together. And I especially enjoyed the profit. It's like, that was, I think, like the highest profit margin ever, because I had no cost. Right? I wasn't the one paying for the
And your parents paid for the photocopier, for the printing,
yeah, exactly.
for the staples. Oh, good.
Yeah. It was all profit. So that was my first entrepreneurial venture. And right now I'm running a publishing house. So it's a business related to publishing, same as when I was 10 years old. So it's really exciting. And, between then and now, I went through business school. I worked in multinational corporations. I did, the whole corporate ladder thing until I left and decided to figure out what I really want to do with myself. And after some soul searching, I found where my passion is, and it's here. It's in helping entrepreneurs get their books out, getting those books on bestseller lists. We got 198 authors on the USA Today bestseller list. We get books in bookstores, and they're mostly business, because that's what I'm really excited about. And business and publishing. It's just such an exciting topic for me, and just love what I'm doing, love the lifestyle that comes with it, love the people who were able to help and whose stories we're able to tell.
I interviewed an editor and a book writer, AJ Harper, a few weeks back, and posted it. I've been looking to write a book, or people were asking me to write a book. They've been asking me for the past, I think, 7 or 8 years. And I'm dyslexic, so my writing and reading is very, and AJ just called bullshit on it. There's editors, there's processes, and I'm in the business of processes, right? We flip businesses. Urjo I should say flip. We help businesses who are struggling and get into space to say, well, I want to sell my business. I don't know what's going to happen. So we roll them up and sell them at a higher multiple. But anyways, all to say that I'm very practical and process oriented. And she said, well, hold on, Martin. Just put your ideas out there. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? Make sure that you write your book for the reader every page. And that kind of, I'm going to ask you some other questions to come back because we have shared history of working for Shell. So what is Alinka? Because I think this is a good time to put, what is the title that you picked for the show today? I think it's great.
Who's going to tell your story?
That we can unpack so much. Are you going to let somebody else tell your story? Are you going to write your own story? Are you going to have some people help you write your story? So tell us, Alinka, before we jump into that, what was the trigger for you? So, because you and I worked at Shell, so I didn't grow up an entrepreneur. I grew up as a military boy, follow the process, and it's only of recent in the past maybe 15 years that I've really developed my entrepreneurial mindset. What was your trigger when you were working to corporate to really transfer back and remembering what you did in elementary? Was it elementary school? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was that trigger? Do you remember that?
So which trigger specifically are you referring to?
What trigger made you go from corporate to entrepreneur?
Okay.
What made you do that big jump to say,
yeah,
what's that one event that you went, that's it. That's what pushed me from going to corporate to running my own business.
Okay, yeah. So in the corporate world, I was on the so-called fast track, in the fast track program. Fast track basically to corporate leadership. So I was supposed to do several projects in several departments because they were basically getting their future leaders ready. And at a certain point, there was a transition of the leadership team. And I ended up with a boss that I think couldn't stand me. It was hate at first sight, basically.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so I had a really hard time. It was very male-dominated because it was, an domestic appliances company, manufacturing operations. So there were like 12 guys in a conference room and myself.
Oh, my.
And I never had particularly a problem with that, but just sort of to give you the idea of, it wasn't the easiest of environments. And before I had a fantastic boss who was also a mentor. He was ready to retire, and I learned a lot from him. I also learned from him that what I was doing was not where my heart was, and he was the one who told me that. He said, I can see you're competent, I can see you care, but I don't see the passion. And he was right. And I think when I got another boss, the one that couldn't really stand me, it was when I started thinking, like, is this all there is? Like, I didn't choose him, but he didn't choose me either. Like, he didn't choose his team. Like, in a corporation, your boss just gets basically placed somewhere and doesn't get to choose the team. The team is already there. So that's something to think about. Like, you think you're going up, 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 and who knows what you can do. But in reality, it doesn't matter how high up the ladder you are, you're still responsible of a segment, and there's so much that you don't have any influence on. And I just thought, hey, is this all there is? Like, is this all there is to want in life? And I went on this self-discovery journey and started writing a book about it. Sort of a journal, sort of a book. And then a colleague told me, oh, you're writing this book? You know that there's self-publishing? Tim Ferriss just self-published a book. You don't need to ask anybody for permission. You can just do it. And that so resonated with me. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't need an agent. I don't need to ask anybody for permission. I can just go and do it. So I learned everything there was to learn. That was in 2010. I learned everything there was to learn about self-publishing, and I went ahead and published this thing. And I had some background in marketing and publishing from primary school. And with some trial and error, I got to a place where I had more revenue coming in from the book royalties than from my corporate salary.
Da 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 da.
Yeah, and I know it's naive to think that this is something you could expect. I never tell this story to any prospects because I don't want them to get some weird expectations. That was in 2010, and I spent a lot of time dedicated to that, and I was probably lucky as well. But it did happen and got me really excited about the potential, about the possibilities. And I thought, hey, corporate guys, maybe I don't need you as much as I thought. At the same time, I negotiated a golden parachute, so they basically paid me like a year and a half of my salary. So my plan was to just, not to start a business. That's what a normal person thinks, right? My plan was to travel around the world and spend it all in a year and then possibly come back. Because I thought, I had a perfect CV. Because I come from academia, family-wise. Both my parents are university professors. All my uncles were their friends, So I grew up in this environment. You need to study, you need to get good grades, you need to think about the next test. So I was just so conditioned towards getting ready for the next test, pleasing this professor, getting that certificate, all this external gratification that was supposed to define my self-worth and who I am, which I really figured out just a couple weeks ago, that this is what screwed me up. So it was really difficult to leave because my, parents were saying, you're climbing up this corporate ladder. There's a line of people that would kill for your job. And it was true because it was a really flashy job with a good pay, much above what, my peers were making. And I didn't want it. I wanted to throw it away, so to speak. But I realized, the longer I was sitting with that decision, the more sure I was that's the thing to do. And maybe a pivotal point was when HR told me that, the position I was in with that terrible boss, that was like a sort of transition position. So nobody was supposed to stay there for longer than a year. It was just a position to learn certain things and then you move on. So where do they move me? There was nothing that there was one thing that I wanted to do. They didn't want me to have that role. And they started sending me to do internal interviews within the company for whatever job positions they thought, would be a good fit. And I remember they were sending me to this, don't remember what the role was, but essentially it was like basically reporting, like building reports from factories in Europe.
Oh,
like,
my goodness.
Yeah, pretty boring. I mean, for me.
Yeah,
I know some people might
exactly.
love it, but not what I wanted to do.
Some people love reporting.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Some people love it. I'm not one of them. Everybody has their, preferences. So I didn't want that specific position. And, the HR lady said, well, you're going to do that interview anyway. First you go do the interview, then you tell me. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go there. My potential boss, lovely guy, he says, well, why do you want this position? And I say, well, I don't. Only HR told me I have to come to this interview, but if you decide to bring me on board, I think that every day a part of me will die inside. So that's what I told him. And then I go back to HR in the afternoon, and I'm like, so?
How did I do?
Yeah, how did I do? And she says, well, he thinks you're competent, but he has some small doubts about your motivation. I'm like, small?
Just small? Oh, my goodness.
So when that started happening, I had like this out-of-body experience looking at myself, thinking, what am I doing? I need to get out of here. And it's just not because the moment I said this, like just in his face, is I think when I realized how much I needed to get out of there. But the thing is, it's sort of like the story with the fish and I don't even know if that's biologically true, but the fish in the water, if you just bring up the temperature gradually, it's going to boil. If you do it right away, it's going to jump out. And I think that's the thing, the temperature goes up slowly, and you're actually comfortable in a corporate position. You're comfortable, you get a good salary, you only work from 9 to 7, which I think is too much anyway. I think it's crazy hours now. But the thing is, you're comfortable. Like, nobody's hitting you or abusing you. Like, there's no such thing, like, I think it's the same, like, with terrible marriages, right? Like, just gradually gets worse. So that's when I left.
There's so many things to unpack in there. First of all, there's the comfort level, right? So many people think that starting your own business is very risky. So therefore they go, I don't want to do that, right? So there's that component. I think there's a safety issue as well. I think a lot of people see safety in a job, yet they have to understand that they're not, what a lot of people don't understand is they're not in control of that life. Right? So as much as we think that, it is, there's risks associated with not making certain decisions, but having a safe. And there's one is not better than the other, as Alinka and I were saying. Some people my wife loves contracts. She's a lawyer by trade. And when she worked at Shell as well, she was a negotiator. She did the contract reviews. She would go through 38 pages of document and identify all the little things that were good or not good about it. I wanted to gouge my eye out with a spoon. Excuse me. There's no way I'd do that. There was no way. So your tolerance to risk is a lot different where you are in life. And this is something that I say continuously. In this day and age, it's hard to be all the young people listen to us who have more experience. They go, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be in charge of my life. I want to do this. But that's not where we started. And I want to make sure that the audience, and when you share this podcast with others, and if you're young and you're a chief everything officer because you only have 3 people in your organization, don't think that Alinka got to live in Italy and doing what she loves right from the get-go. Right? She had to work hard to where she is. And sometimes you have to go through, I worked entrepreneurial, then corporate, then entrepreneur. And as a solopreneur, I did corporate contracts. So there was a journey behind that is ups and downs in regards to where you are in life, right? When I got a divorce, my only divorce, I should say, I wasn't safe. So I needed something to attach myself with that I can focus on my children. So I got more of a gig that was more 9 to 5, which was what I needed back then. So don't look at the box as is. Look at the journey that Alinka has gone. And I think the second thing that I want to unpack is the realization of being the fish in the tank. And I think too often entrepreneurs don't understand that even though you are in charge, you questioned your position. Is this the right thing for me? You challenged it with others involuntarily. You didn't really think through. I think this has just kind of happened from the story that you're telling. But you challenged the status quo. And just because you're an entrepreneur now doesn't mean that it's the best thing for you now. So I think it's important to challenge your mindset on where you are in your journey. So thank you. That was a beautiful story.
Thank you. I like your take on it.
So let's go back to, because I think this is critical, because I'm going to learn a lot about this, because I'm on the journey right now of writing my own book. So I've taken the behaviors of writing 2 pages a day, read more. So to be able to write, you need to read more. My dyslexia has caused me to push aside reading, because I read a lot of emails and reports and stuff like that. So I'm exhausted from reading. Reading takes me a lot more energy than most people. So I'm going to learn a lot from our conversations. Why did you, or from our conversation today, why did you choose the title that we chose? And what is the title again, please?
Who's going to tell your story?
So why did you choose that title?
Well, somebody will tell your story eventually. And for most of you listening, you will have very little influence on what the story will be, because it will be told by others. And, you know, they all have their biases, and they all look through different lenses. So the only way to really tell the story, or have the story told the way you want it, is to tell it yourself. And, you know, the best way to do it, I think, is through a book. Because right now, books have been with us forever. I mean, forever. Since the beginning of the spoken word. Or, sorry, of the written word. The clay tablets, the, you know, that whole evolution. And now we have paperbacks and ebooks and audiobooks. But, you know, that the paperback, the beauty of the paperback is, like, we've had it since Gutenberg, basically. So even though we have all the, you know, social media and now the metaverse and all this stuff, like, hey, people still know what a paperback is. They know how to use it. Okay?
Yes.
You don't need a login or a password to open it up. And, you know, I don't think they're going to go anywhere anytime soon, even though the technology keeps advancing. And the beauty right now is, like, especially with print on demand, like, anybody can get a book anytime because it's printed specifically for the order. So it's not like you're going to have a print run of 2,000 copies and then maybe, you know, in some years
Hope for the best.
It's going to run out. Yeah, you're without. No. So I'm not specifically pitching print on demand here. We do both. We both have traditional distribution and print on demand, but just, you know, that's how you can tell your story and make sure it's told. You can choose to tell your story on a social media platform. Like, hey, remember MySpace? Maybe you told your story there. I don't think your kids are actually going to access that in any way.
No, yeah.
Right? And now we have a bunch of social media platforms, which our kids, when they grow up, like, they will not even vaguely remember. Okay.
I agree.
A book, though, I mean, I think podcasts are really solid. Pretty sure they're going to, you know, stick around for a while. But the book just has proven to, you know, pass the test of time. And so I'll just give you an example. There are two types of books that we do. One type is a lead generation tool to grow your business. Another type is a legacy piece to basically be remembered by you know, what you say. And so we did this lead generation tool for our company. The book is called Outsource Your Book. So it explains how you can get your book out by following the 17-step process without having to actually do any of the work. Inside the book, there's a link to a calendar where you can set up a call and see if you could potentially do that with us. So we had that book published, optimized for, you know, online search, because Amazon is a search engine. So, you know, the book needs to be optimized so that it pops up on top. And I remember at a certain... now I have a sales team. But at the time, the link from the book went directly to my calendar.
Oh my.
It doesn't anymore. But at that time, it went directly to my calendar. I remember I was on vacation. I was skiing in the Alps. So I wasn't checking my emails a lot. But like an hour a day, I did work. And at a certain point, I see in my calendar a DHL address. I'm like, I wonder who from DHL is trying to book a call with me. And I look up the name, and it's, hey, it's the founder. I'm like, what?
Oh, my goodness.
So the co-founder of DHL International, I got on my calendar. We hopped on a call, then a couple other calls, and we did a book for him to celebrate DHL's 50th anniversary.
That's cool.
So, and I'm telling the story for two reasons. One is so that you can see how a lead generation book works to grow your business. Second is the co-founder of DHL International. He had already written books, but he was never satisfied, completely satisfied with them. And he wanted this book to be the book that is really going to tell his story the way he wants it to be told. And that's how the book Designed to Win was born. And, that's the way he wants to be remembered. We had a project of doing 2 other books. Unfortunately, he's not so in such good shape as he was when we did that book. So he's not able to do the other 2 books. But he does have one book that he's really proud of, and this is how he wants to be remembered. So I think that's a profound story.
It
He
is.
got to tell his story. Who's going to tell yours?
It's I have been diving into it since. I was, like I said, I was mostly. I don't want to say annoyed, but people would bug me all the time. Oh, Martin, you've got so many insights. You've got so many good stories. If there's somebody that I would love to sit by on a campfire, would be beside you. You've got so many stories. You connect people. You like to share experiences. I was like, yeah, I know. But I think I was always afraid of being judged for what. But I brought so many things. But that fear of being judged was far greater. Excuse me. And my good friend, very good friend, Dominic Rubino, Italian boy, he pumps out books. He can sit down over a weekend and write an entire book. That's how creative and well-spoken he is. He uses his books for marketing, right? He says, author of this book, and he provides insights in it of how to run the business. But for me, it is more of a legacy piece, and you've identified it well. I want to write a book about the journey that I'm on to be able to, like AJ mentioned, people need to connect with me, and I need to write to help them transform, as if you were buying a new pair of hiking boots. When you buy hiking boots, you don't buy them for who you are today. You buy them for the person you want to become. You buy these hiking boots you want to become a better hiker. You want your knees to hurt less. You want to go further with your kids on that hike. You're buying it for the person you're going to become. And that's what I think you're saying in the legacy book is write a book where people are going to say, you need to read this book. Now, it might not connect with the other, but people feel so convinced that this is a game changer for them. That I think is the legacy book that I want to write. And I'm assuming that a lot of CEOs of my age and in a position where you're disconnected from your business, you're liberated from it, I think it's a beautiful gift to give yourself as well. Is where have I been? And I think it falls so much in line with the title. Who's going to tell your story? Why don't you do it?
Beautiful.
Right? So how does this... So tell us what... Because now I'm super curious, right? How do you... So I know... So AJ gave me a book, how to write the book. But writing the book is, I guess... You can be reactive or proactive. I think what you're offering in your methodology is let me walk you and hold your hand through the writing journey. Is that what you do? Or do you come at the back end, at the front end? How does it work? I'm super curious.
Well, the way we like to do it is you come with a book idea and you leave as a best-selling author with your book in bookstores. So to unpack that, what you need is an idea. And what we want to understand is how are we going to make it marketable? So the first thing we do is a strategy call. And we go through the bookshelf exercise. That exercise is, you can do that either in a bookstore or online. So you basically go into the bookstore, you look for the shelf where your book should be sitting. Okay, so
That's cool.
let's say business.
Yeah.
And then you niche it down. So what business? Maybe startups, okay? And then you look at all the books that are there. You say, okay, my book is going to be here on this shelf. And then you say, but how is my book going to stand out? What is the reason the reader will pick my book as opposed to the other ones on the shelf? So this is your unique selling proposition. Once we have that, we know the book is marketable. Then we can move forward. We're going to prepare an outline. So an outline is either a framework that you've developed, or if it's a memoir, it could be chronological, the major milestones in your life. So a framework or chronological for your outline, which is basically the table of contents. And then there's a series of interviews, about 15, and you get questions in advance. So you come to the interview, you get those questions. I mean, you get to think about them in advance. We don't want you to write anything. So you come, basically like now you're interviewing me. An interviewer would be interviewing you based on the questions that have been written before. But obviously, things come up and you want to dig in somewhere. You want to do a deep dive. And, so maybe those questions, they'll be good for 2 interviews. And, maybe you change course a little bit. It's a collaborative process. But basically, every time you meet, you're not sitting in front of a blank page.
So
there
are things
you
doing
want to discover.
live editing. So what I was taught is write the content, and then a content editor will come back and ask you a whole bunch of questions. What you're doing is you're changing. It's like a game changer. You're changing that around, saying, okay, let me challenge you on what you should be writing to give better direction. That's lovely. That's lovely.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry for interrupting. Sorry.
No, it's great. Great. Then based on that, when we have all those, all those calls are recorded and transcribed. And then based on that, we write the book. And then we do the actual editing. But that's the editing that, the editor would do, and all the developmental, the copy editing. But we don't really, when we write the book, we don't really need to do developmental editing. Which is like challenging what you just said, because we do it during the book creation process. Well, but we also work from manuscript. So you can come with an idea, or you can come with a manuscript. Usually when people come with a manuscript, it's a mess and there's a lot of work. But when people come with an idea, then, it's pretty smooth sailing to get the book done. Because we know how to do it. We do it right from scratch.
Yeah, AJ said, don't be afraid. Your first draft will be shit. That's what she said. Yeah. She said, it will be awful. You'll need to do a lot of, because we're not writers. We just kind of dump a whole bunch of things. I mean, when you first start off, I'm assuming that we're talking about, as a rookie, editor or a rookie writer, I should say, right?
Yeah. I think Hemingway, was it, that said the first draft of anything is shit? We have to look it up if that was him. Yeah. I mean, especially if you've never written anything. So ours are not so bad, because it's somebody professionally writing books for other people. They're pretty good, but they're still considered first drafts. So we still go back and forth to make sure we get a really polished final draft. Then from there is the publishing and the launch, and we can talk about that.
So why would somebody want to be a bestseller? What's the benefit of being a bestseller?
Well, it opens a lot of doors, and even though logically it might not make sense because you're not any smarter or, or cooler, maybe cooler, but you're not any smarter after writing the book than before. Like, you still know the same stuff, more or less. But it's just the authority thing, when people say, let me introduce to you our keynote speaker, whoever, John Smith. Or let me introduce our keynote speaker, USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author John Smith. It's different. Like, it's extra points for the host. It's excitement within the audience. It's the authority piece. It's the same. It's like, it's really funny. It's like being a movie star almost, and then going on a commercial and advertising cereal. Like, they're not
I get it. I know where you're going with that. Yeah,
right. Like, they're not a doctor or nutritionist who actually has, reasons to stand behind a brand. I mean, it's not logical at all, but people will buy it because there's a famous face. And it's the same then when you have a book as a salesperson. Like we get our sales guys. Our sales guys have books because they are considered authorities, and also because before potential clients who are CEOs wanted only to talk to me because I was the author. I said, hey guys, I only have 24 hours in a day, and I don't want to spend 24 hours, even if I could, talking to you guys. So I need a team, and now they have books, and they're best-selling authors as well. So they have this authority. They're not any smarter than they were before. They're not better at sales, but now they're best-selling authors. So now the prospects will talk to them too. And, you can raise your speaking fees if you're a speaker. And we've had people double their speaking fees because of that. Investors want to talk to you or will remember you more because you gave them the book and not a business card. So it just opens so many doors, even if it's not logical.
So that's the transactional marketing side of things. If you write a bestseller, is it life-changing in, let's say, there's a couple of areas life-changing. Is it life-changing financially? Where, at what point, how many books do you have to sell to make, $500,000 worth of revenue in a year, right? So I think $500,000 is a good salary to live off, to not do anything, or to fully retire, if you want to call it that.
It depends on how you're set up. If you're thinking about fiction or only about royalties, that's a really small percentage of authors who will make that amount off of royalties. It's tiny. And we actually have a blog post that we wrote recently. If you go to leaderspress.com/blog, the 15 most paid authors, who they are and how much they make and based on what. So that's not what we're aiming at. What we like to do is work with an entrepreneur who already has a set up business and get them that extra $500,000 through the book. So as I was describing the lead generation book, so put out a book, get a link in there, and then you need to see what the return on investment is, and how much you can make off of that book. Like we've made more than that on our book, but you need to see how you're set up. So if you're selling $100,000 packages of whatever service you have, you need 5 clients off of your book to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I think of me, so I'm in the business of flipping businesses for people my age, right? If I tell my journey, my legacy book, where I talk about my journey and how I can move people who are saying, oh, well, I wasn't thinking about selling my business, and now I want to liberate myself. I need to talk to Martin because of that. So although we're not using the book as a marketing tool, or I should say, we're writing a book as a legacy book, you can still use that legacy book as a marketing kudos point to attract eyes to who the individual is, and then your business earns points from that notoriety or that
yes.
fame, I guess.
So in your case, you have 2 benefits. One is lead generation, and the other one is lead conversion. So lead generation is when you have your book optimized for online sales and it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, basically all the online retailers. People that would not find you through your podcast, for example, will find you through the book. So that's one. You get an extra pool of people that you could potentially work with who you're not reaching right now. And then you have the lead conversion piece, which is somebody who might be interested in working with you is a reader, not so much a listener, but a reader. And they will get the book, they will read it, and they could say, hey, Martin really knows what he's talking about. I'd love to, dive in deeper. How can I get into his world, or maybe to him? You tell them in the book. So you are opening up your, potential pool of people to work with. And then if, you want to do a big campaign, get on the USA Today bestseller list, that increases, the leads potentially coming in. and you get that extra authority that you're a USA Today best-selling author. And then they could say, okay, so I could work with Martin or I could work with his competitor. But hey, Martin is a USA Today best-selling author. So everything, all other things being equal, I'd rather go to Martin.
So what's the difference between New York Times and USA Today? Because I think now you've got me so curious. I got 1,000 questions. So what's the difference between New York Times and USA Today bestsellers?
USA Today, the rank. Okay, so in USA Today, there's 150 top sold books in the US every week, and it's based on the sales coming from Nielsen Bookscan. So it's the list is compiled exclusively based on sales.
Gotcha.
Sales only. The New York Times list, they look at sales, but it's an editorial list. So you might have the sales necessary to be on the list, but they might not like your book title, your publisher, or your face, and they're not going to include you.
That's despicable.
A few people know that.
Oh my goodness. So
But if you go and to their website, they say this is editorial content.
Decision. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So enough about the process. Let's talk more about you. So you're very successful. You're very excited about what you're talking about. What's the biggest struggle you're faced with today? What are you struggling with today?
Well, we had a really tough first half of the year this year because of rapid growth. Explosive growth, and everybody's like, what? But if somebody's actually been through it, they know what I'm talking about. We invested a lot in research and development. We sold a lot on installment plans.
Oh.
And we got into a cash crunch.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a lot coming in the upcoming months and, already signed agreements. But we invested here. The team sold a lot of those. We're growing. We've been doubling every year. And so, we're at a point where we're like, okay, we need to make some decisions here. And that's never comfortable. But we're, like last month was pretty tough. But this month we're already getting support, and we've already figured things out. The things we've invested in are bringing in a return. We're working with partners to help our clients get financing. So, but it was amazing to see, which team members were on board and would say, hey, this is an opportunity to work on a few things within sales, work on a few things within operations. And, so that was just amazing, just to see how supportive people are. So like I had team members say, look, listen, I've been here for 3 years. I've been here for 5 years. If we're having a problem and we need to make some decisions, I don't need my salary this month. Like I'm happy to wait an extra month, and it's just having this. I didn't ask them for it, but just the volunteering and saying we've seen, we've just seen the growth. We're part of this growth. We understand this. We're making a good living, so we don't need to live from paycheck to paycheck. And to me, it was the people who identified themselves and just telling me that there's an even stronger bond right now.
Of course.
So yeah, it was not so easy, but you really see who's got your back, and who's some other team members were like, okay, well the road to success is not a straight line. It's ups and downs and zigs and zags, and so there was emotional support, there was financial support, and that's great because it's not just transactional. It wouldn't be any fun if it was. And I really appreciate that, and we learned a lot.
Two things. Did you hear Alinka sigh? That big breath that she took when she said the bond is even bigger. The sigh was not a sigh of despair. It was a sigh of comfort. It was like, oh, they're there for me. So I analyze behaviors very well, and I think that is a clear demonstration of explosive growth. So for those who don't understand explosive growth, is like having a rubber band where you stretch it as much as you can, and then you let it go. You stretch it, there is no consistency. So explosive growth is like you're successful, you're bringing in revenue, but the profitability, it's hard to match. And therefore, in a normal business, you make the money, invest the money, take the money, split the money up, then reinvest it into business, grow the business. And it grows organically, consistently, so you don't necessarily have cash crunches. When you're a younger company that is in explosive growth, it's up, all the way down. So you're going so fast when you're doubling year over year that it's hard to keep up with profitability and systems to be able to make sure that what you have to do is you have to keep the quality checks in place, and to scale the business at such a younger stage creates a lot of havoc in your profitability and your cash flow. So I just want to put that for those people who don't understand what explosive growth means, is that's exactly it. And I loved how you said emotional support first, because it is a roller coaster. Because one day you're super happy, you've got, oh my goodness, we got all these sales, and the next day you look at the bank account and you go, how did that happen? How do we have, $7 million worth of sales in the past 6 months, and we got $12 in the bank account? How's that work, right? Right. So you keep your eyes on the budget. I'm exaggerating here, but the emotional situation. So those are two things that I caught when Alinka was telling her journey on what key. So let's talk about, in the last few minutes here, what are you working on now? What's in your vision? What are you thinking about? What does your company do in the next year? What's the new thing coming?
I'm pretty consistent. So we want to do more of what we're doing.
Okay, good.
We invested a lot on figuring out more effective ways of doing marketing campaigns and getting on the USA Today bestseller list. So we did it for 198 people. Not all of it was profitable for us, but now we know how to do it. Now we know how to do it profitably, and we have a 100% success rate. So we've always managed to do that. And it's really exciting. I want more people to be able to get their books out, to be able to tell their story, to become best-selling authors, and to be able to enjoy the authority that it brings.
Absolutely. So, Alinka, I'm going to ask you, this is the last question. I think is going to be the hardest question for you, is I ask all my guests, what's the one book, one piece of material, one reference, one movie that you keep by your side all the time that you always refer back to? For a lady who publishes books and reads books and does all these books, that's going to be a hard question to answer. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. I'll stick to something that influenced me when I was still a teenager. And that book is something I'm sure you've heard of, and you listeners have heard of. It's Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
So that's the methodology or the philosophy or the thinking that I like to apply. Then, since then, there have been many other spin-offs and schools of thought. And there are some that I'm particularly close to. But I think Think and Grow Rich is something that a lot of you resonate with and can, get a positive feeling about. And that's the starting point. For me, that was the starting point. And that's where the journey starts. So that's not the end. That's just a start. And I would go and grab anything else that, Amazon recommends. If you read this book, you'll probably also like all these other books, and get started like that. Or go to the store and see what other books are on the shelf or on the shelves next to it. And don't just read it, implement. So that's Those are my final words.
Absolutely. Fabulous. Well, thank you very much, Alinka, I've got so many more questions, but I think if you want to get a hold of her, Alinka, you're on LinkedIn, I'm sure.
Yes. The best place to go to is leaderspress.com. If you go to leaderspress.com/discover, you'll get to do a 1-minute quiz, which will tell you which book is the right one for you, because we talked about lead gen, legacy pieces, so you'll see which one. And you'll get an audiobook, because you like to listen. You'll get an audiobook of Outsource Your Book. So how you can get your book out without actually having to do too much.
Oh, that's fabulous. Fabulous. Thank you very much, Alinka. What a wonderful conversation. And it's very close to me, so I'm after the show we'll talk about you and I, how can I help you? So with that being said, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get notified for when the next episode comes out. With that being said, my name is Martin Hunter. I'm the host of What CEOs Talk About, where we just translated how to get your book onto people and get the USA Today Best Published. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and thank you very much, Alinka.
Thanks for tuning in to What CEOs Talk About. Make sure to click subscribe to get notified about future episodes, or check us out at www.whatceostalkabout.com.